I just finished leveling an explosive gas arrow Amazon. And it was quite a journey to get here. A little bit of a rough start, but now I'm riding around on a bird, blasting everything. So, first up in this video, I'm going to talk about my build as it stands right now. My current gear, I've spent roughly 30 exalts total, most of which went into my helmet, which promptly went down in price, but such is life. Then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my leveling journey, what I used in the early acts, what was good, what was bad, and what you should do differently in those cases, and a few of my experiences along the way. Because while my early act 1 was quite rough while I was messing with the spear skills, by the time I swapped to Gas Hero, I honestly had a pretty good time. But on that note, I'm not very far into the endgame right now. I've only done like T1, T2, couple T3 maps, so if you want to see more on my endgame experiences, then do be sure to get subscribed and maybe leave a like while you're down there. For now, let's get into things, starting with the build. Okay, so don't mind the messy inventory. Let's start with the gear. First up, my weapon. The ideal bow base you want is any of the bows that have bow attacks, fire, and additional arrow. Think about it this way. If firing 1 gas arrow is good, firing 2 gas arrows is better, functionally doubling whatever your damage would normally be. So, as a result, you should prioritize this. The other item that you should absolutely prioritize, and the one that I spent most of my currency on, is Radiant Grief. This means that enemies in your presence are ignited, thus meaning you don't have to manually cast Flame Wall. That's very important, because when you're riding around on the Royal Companion in the mapping stage, you're going to be dismounted every time you try to cast a spell like Flame Wall. That said, in the campaign, you absolutely do not need Radiant Grief. Just have a low-level Flame Wall, basically save a low-level gem or mule it by making a new character. Let's see, I've got mine somewhere around here. Here we go, Flame Wall, level 1, costs 12 mana. It works. Aside of that, my goal with my gear was to cap my resistances and get life. And I think I succeeded. I've got almost 1600 life and my resistances are all capped. Note, you didn't say anything here. My lightning resistance is definitely capped. So, let's just go over gear. On rings, flat damage is good. Mana regen is also good. I don't have it right now, but if you can get accuracy, that's even better. For quiver, flat damage is really, really nice, as is critical damage. Beyond that, prod skills, bow damage, crit chance, all fun stats. Realistically, I would prioritize lightning damage above everything else though, as it's quite handy for proccing Herald of Thunder. On your amulet, you need spirit. If you don't have enough spirit, you don't get the bird. But again, in the campaign, do not worry about this. In the campaign, just look for mana regen, life, res. Boots, movement speed. That is the number 1 stat that you should have on your boots. If you don't have movement speed on your boots, you're doing boots wrong. After that, life and res. Gloves are another place you can get flat damage. The Fizz attack leeches life, basically useless here, so ignore it. Life is very good, resist is very good, accuracy, dexterity. On belt, I really like having strength, and I also really like having the increased flask life recovery rate. That makes a significant difference. Beyond that, life and res. And then for flasks, I really like more recovery if used on low life. And for mana flask, increased amount recovered is pretty good. Increased charges gained is pretty good. Gain charges over time is even better. But basically, as long as my mana flask is recovering my full pool, I'm happy regardless of what the mods say. Now, I'm currently using a Thawing Charm, but I'd really like to get a new belt with +1 charm slot. That way I can have a Thawing Charm and a Stun Charm. So that's my gear as it is right now. Again, in the campaign, there are lower level versions of his bow base that you can look out for, but realistically you want whatever bow has the highest damage at the time. Just count the bow attacks, fire, and additional arrow as doubling whatever the number happens to say on your bow. And then when it comes to Radiant Grief, again, you do not need it. It is very good. You should have it because that's what lets you use the Royal Companion. But if you're not there yet, don't panic. Just keep farming with Flame Wall. That's what I did for a lot of my early maps. So now let's talk about the skills. First up, Bow Shot. This does a surprising amount of damage if you're constantly running out of mana during the campaign. Now, by endgame, you should be able to get enough mana recovery and enough mana flask sustain that you don't really need this. But if you're in a situation where you're sitting there fighting a boss, you're out of mana, don't just sit there fighting a boss being out of mana. Use Bow Shot, poke it, put some supports in. On the other hand, most of your single target comes from Freezing Salvo. This is a nuke skill, which you add a cooldown via Hourglass support. Not only does this make it deal more damage, but it means you can't use it too frequently. That is actually a good thing, because freezing salvo accumulates arrows over time. As you can see, it caps at 12, and in the cooldown of Hourglass I get 10 arrows, which means it's basically at full power by the time I can actually use it next. You want to be using it as it accumulates arrows rather than spamming it. Spamming it's just kind of a waste of mana, and it is pretty expensive. So adding the cooldown is good. After that, Ice Bite. Why? It's very likely to freeze stuff, so attacks gain 35% of damage as extra cold. And Glaciation for more freeze buildup to make sure you're freezing enemies. Your main attack, on the other hand, is Gas Arrow. And I know, this number seems low. You might be like, yeah, but why are you using this number when you could have this number? The answer is because Gas Arrow is a complicated skill, and you need to take a minute to understand it. Because that initial number is just for the arrow hitting the enemy. Then you get this second number, which is the Poison Cloud, that deals 189% of attack damage, and you're limited to 6 clouds. That might be a problem if your goal was to stack gas clouds. Your goal is to explode gas clouds, though, which means, in fact, it is the 242% number. And now you're dealing the 81 plus the 242 and filling the screen with explosions, which is, of course, a buff because you're filling the screen with explosions. I like Martial Tempo, Primal Armament, and Immolate. That said, if you're struggling for mana, you can absolutely drop Martial Tempo for charged shots. This way, you attack slower, thus you use less mana, and every third attack gets a nice little damage bonus, plus restores mana, effectively canceling out one of the previous shots. So as you can see, way better mana sustain. If you're ever struggling for mana, just swap over to charged shots. Then Barrage. I call Barrage a fun button, because when you hit Barrage, it creates a bunch of clouds which should instantly detonate as they impact with burning enemies. Voltaic Mark, you put it up on enemies, then they explode, creating lightning AoEs. This is really just there for the explosion, so you don't need to worry about it on single target. Wind Dancer, nice defensive buff. Row Amount, again, endgame, you're not using this while leveling. And Herald of Thunder, nice lightning procs that deal a fair bit of damage and give you innovate when they sometimes kill enemies. For passive tree, the important part, Predatory Instinct first. This is about 22.5% more damage, which is really, really good. And then Critical Strike second. Why Critical Strike? Well, let's just take Gas Arrow. Explosion. Crit chance, 46.48%. It's very easy to get a very high crit chance as a result of stacking additional accuracy. And luckily, there's a lot of things like Eagle Eye that make it very easy to stack accuracy even at low levels on an Amazon. So you come out here, you go over here to Primal Sundering for damage. At low levels, you'll come up to Harness the Elements. You'll continue on. Don't mind this node. I just needed the intelligence to test something, and I'm going to be dropping it in just a minute. Then over here to Catalysis, which I probably mispronounced, up to Maiming Strike, and around to Acceleration. Then you want to come over to around Falcon Technique and Proficiency. This should take care of all of your dexterity requirements. Around here, you should be getting Critical Strike, so you start taking the accuracy stuff. And then you either get Wrapped Quiver and Master Fletching, if your quiver is very good, or if your quiver is not very good, you go up through Enhanced Reflexes to Stuck Through for more crit. You take Decisive Retreat, you take Cooked, and you add these nodes whenever you actually have a good quiver. I am experimenting with Inspiring Ally. Think around this level, which is 70-ish. It's good. Long term, I want enough points to travel over to Deadly Force. So that's going to be a little bit of a journey. Right now, I have, let's see, 6 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could get a jewel socket, and then not put anything in it because I don't have a jewel. So I'm going to need like 5, 10 levels before it's really worth coming over here and dropping these nodes. These are just a stopgap. And so yeah, that's what I've done so far in the early endgame. It's been pretty darn fun, especially once you get to the point where you can ride around on the bird. But one word of warning. As you get hit on the bird, you build up stagger. And if you're taking a lot of damage, that stagger builds up very quickly, just a couple hits, and you'll be stunned on the ground, and, well, if you get heavy stunned on the ground in a pack of monsters, you're dead. So, before you start using the row amount, get Radiant Grief. That's number 1. Number 2, cap your resistances. And number 3, get a good chunk of life. I'd say like 1,300 to 1,600. Maybe get a little bit of evasion too. I have like 75%, feels pretty good. And so that's my build as it is now. Next, I want to go into what I did on my leveling journey. So, in early Act 1, I was playing around with a bunch of his spear skills. Since I was playing around with them, a lot has changed. Twister, which used to be very OP, has now been nerfed. Still seems pretty okay though. Lightning Spear actually got buffed. But my experience with most of his spear skills was that they felt very mediocre. Outside of Rake, none of the melee skills felt that good to me, and in terms of a ranged spear skills, the attack speed penalty feels really bad, plus they only start to shine once you have frenzy charges, which are pretty darn hard to sustain at low levels. So I swapped to Lightning Arrow with Stormcaller Arrow, using Stormcaller just to keep shocking enemies and add those little damage procs. Lightning Arrow adds the skill that I mainly spammed and did most of my damage with. After doing this, it definitely worked a lot better than the spear skills that I was using, but since I used spear skills for most of Act 1, swapped to Lightning Arrow basically just for Geonor, and then swapped back to spear skills to mess around more in early Act 2. I don't actually have any footage of myself playing Lightning Arrow. That said, if you want to see the skill progression, do check out the planner that I'll have linked down below. In addition to this, once you get a skill gem level 5, towards the end of Act 1, you will get your first chance to use Freezing Salvo. And this is what is going to carry you for the rest of your leveling experience. It does significant single target damage, it freezes and deletes rares, and it does huge chunks of damage on bosses as well. After you get to Act 2 and get a level 7 skill gem, this is where you can finally swap to Gas Arrow. Remember, you want a low-level Flame Wall, so you need a low-level gem. Level 1, 2, or 3 works the best. Either A, you can save a low-level gem, but maybe you're already halfway into Act 2 and you're rerolling to this build. Don't worry, just make a new character, get a new level 1 gem after killing the Bloated Miller, takes like 5 minutes of your time, and you're easily going to be able to just cut a level 1 Flame Wall. Toss it in your stash, swap back over to your other character. From here, honestly, it was pretty smooth. I noticed that the clear wasn't always perfect, which is why I ended up working in Voltaic Mark, and having Barrage to burst down rares and delete chunks from bosses was very fun. I don't think Barrage is super impactful if you're like, do I really have to hit another button 10? You don't have to hit another button, but also it's a really fun button, so I strongly recommend that you hit it. And if you're wondering, how early can I swap to Varroa Mount? I tried Varroa Mount in the campaign, and I do not recommend it. The two reasons being, number one, it's very easy to get stunned off Varroa Mount, and that stun is basically death. And again, number two, you need the Radiant Grief first, and Radiant Grief probably isn't the easiest thing to find while you're leveling during the campaign. I would say that my Act 1 experience was quite rough. In fact, it might have even been rougher than my initial Act 1 League start experience when Early Access launched playing a warrior. Act 2, also a little rough, but especially once I got to Cruel, things smoothed out. Gas Arrow is very comfy, and Amazon has a lot of inbuilt damage. Between the exposed weakness that makes it much easier to deal with bosses, and the extra crit scaling, especially if you're firing at enemies from close range, I found it to be pretty easy as long as I paid enough attention to upgrade my weapon regularly at the vendor. I wouldn't say the leveling experience was the fastest, cleanest, or smoothest that I had, but overall, it wasn't bad all things considered, and I do think Gas Arrow did quite a lot to carry the experience so far. With that said, how's map progression going to go? I have no idea. So far, in Tier 1, 2, and 3 maps, it was a little rough at first, but once I capped my resistances, it's gone a lot better, and I'll just have to see where things go from here. Now, if you want to level an explosive Gas Arrow Amazon for yourself, then do not do what I did, especially not the spending random times in Act 1 playing with spear skills. Instead, do what I advise in the planner that I have over on Maxwell GG. I have some step-by-step leveling progression that takes you through the campaign, I have some gear recommendations, and it ends where my gear is now in early maps. So, a link to that will be down in the description below, and of course, as always, over in my Discord. If you want to see how the build turns out, or if I reroll to something else, again, please do get subscribed. And if you want to see some of my other content, there should be something on screen for you to check out right now. With that said, that's going to be it for me today, so thank you very much for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed, good luck in your leveling, and I'll see you in the next one.